You're listening to I Communicate with your host, Mark Altman, on Full Service Radio, AM 830 WCRN. Once again, here's Mark.
All right, we're back. Final segment here on this Thursday afternoon. I don't like the weather report I just heard on the last segment, so just, be in denial on that one. So in any event, Lisa, thank you so much for sharing that personal stories, I should say, before the break. It's really amazing the kinds of challenges you've had to go through between two difficult deaths, obviously, and sudden in both cases, along with your divorce. And it really speaks to why you're an expert on resilience and perseverance. So with that said, I want to shift directions a little bit, and I want to talk about, I know a lot of the work you do with entrepreneurs at Narium is these are people who are passionate about starting their own business and making things happen. And when I think of entrepreneur, the most important characteristics of an entrepreneur, Lisa, and we could argue this, there's tons of them, right? But the three that stick out to me is, one is perseverance, one is passion, because if you're not excited about what you do, then no one else is going to be. And the other is the ability to sell yourself and your value proposition and how you're going to get people interested in you and in your products. So what are the challenges you're seeing people running into as they're trying to grow their respective business? Are those the challenges? Are you seeing different kinds of challenges? What are you seeing out there?
Well, it's interesting because, they say by 2020, 50% of the households will have some sort of side gig. So a lot of people will have this entrepreneurial, spirit sort of evolving. And when people get passionate about something, especially you hear all the time, well, I'm not a salesperson. I don't want to sell. But, every day we're recommending something to somebody, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you realize it or not, you're when your kids don't want to eat their broccoli, right?
Right. It's a great example, actually.
So it's really your energy. And it's not so much how you do it, it's how you do the hows and what that translates, but also finding out from the other person how you can help them.
Yeah, and I think your example is great. And I often say that, kids, whenever I get a group of people together for a training, I always say, how many people in here have sales experience? And nobody raises your hand. I'm like, you all should raise your hand because you've been selling since you were 5 years old when you're trying to get out of something from your parents or trying to convince your parents of something. So I think you're spot on. And I think, talk about mindset, Lisa, getting out of the mindset of that dirty word of sales and getting it into relationship building and helping is so critical, correct?
Absolutely. When everybody wants to feel significant, right? Everybody wants to be special. I mean, everybody has this big sign on them saying, make me feel special, recognize me. And so when you can help someone, in that way and just whether it's finding out a need, asking questions. I always like to find out, about their family. What do they do for work? What do they do for fun? What's their mission or what motivates them?
Well, Lisa, you said something to me before the show, and I know it really speaks to the core and heart of who you are, but I wanted you to address it because I think it's important. You said, I don't treat people like a dollar sign. I treat people, you want to get to know people, and so there's a level of authenticity that is required to be successful as an entrepreneur. And is that just a natural quality for you? Is that something you learn from someone? Where does that come from?
I mean, I believe that all our qualities are developed over time, right? And so we're always improving. I say every day that I'm on a mission to become a better version of myself than I was yesterday. But, like animals, I love dogs. I have 2 grandpups at my house right now. But a dog can tell when you're not being real, right? And people can. And, if you have this front on, people are they're gonna sniff that right out. So I always say, be yourself, be authentic. You don't have to be scripted, just be genuine.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I guess I would ask you, as you were developing these qualities over time, was there an actual, we talked about processes and outcomes earlier in the show. Has there been an actual process that you have when you coach and help people? Is it just comes natural to you? How does that all work?
I'm always working on it. I'm working with coaches, through my company. Every week we get together as a group and we share experiences because what works, with one person isn't going to work, with somebody else. But stories, people love to hear stories and we learn from stories.
Yeah, and I think of the concept of, and I see the same thing, Lisa, so many entrepreneurs are afraid of sales and afraid that You know what they're afraid of? They're afraid of the perception of being pushy or aggressive or whatever, and that's a big aspect of it. And I'm always fascinated by the topic of people who are assertive versus aggressive, because aggressive to me is just a harsh way of delivering assertive behavior. So how do you get people through that mental roadblock of, oh my God, I don't want people to think I'm pushy? Do you encounter that, and how do you help people with that?
Well, I always help people to understand that they're being pleasantly persistent, right? And, media, they realize that, 9 to 12 times you have to put a commercial in front of somebody before they're going to, have some movement there. It's the same thing with anything in life. You see something over and over and over again. And third party is so important. For example, a parent. You tell your children something to do, or you guide them to some, through some situation, and they don't listen to you, right? But then they go to school and the teacher says it, and if they come home and they're like, Mom, guess what I learned?
That's a great example.
So we really try to help people that it's third party. You don't have to know everything, be everything. We work as a team, and we have tools to help, resources.
Lisa, if I had your daughters here right now sitting in the studio, and I said, if you were to comment on some things you've seen your mother evolve, like observations that they've made, where if I talked to them 5 years ago up until today, what do you think are the awarenesses they've had about you that you've modeled and that they've observed?
Well, it's interesting because my daughter yesterday was talking to somebody, and she said, "Oh, Mom, this woman was getting so upset, and she just couldn't cope with something that had happened." And she said, "Gosh, I wanted to say to her, you need to talk to my mother."
Wow.
So I guess the coping skills have helped them. I always try to help them understand, where the other person's coming from. Try to think of how the other person feels. When you're
empathy.
Yeah.
And so, Lisa, when you put your head down on the pillow at night, and you're going to bed, and I don't know if this is your process or not, and you were to assess your day. Did I have a good day? Was it not a good day? What are your ingredients to say? I mean, I know your gratitude thing when you wake up in the morning, but how do you assess your own happiness or success during a day?
Well, I am a woman of faith, so I know that if, my maker, if he's happy with what I did today, then I know I've done a good job, because I know I'm just an extension of the source. So, if my grandparents would be proud of me, if I did something, they would be proud of my parents. I always think that in the back of my mind, right?
And as a parent, if you were to give some advice to some parents out there about some steps they could take to facilitate happiness for their child, and maybe put that happiness, those steps, over grades or success in sports or things like that, what advice would you give?
Believe in your children, but your words are louder than anything else you could do. So many times we'll say something, I catch myself, because even if you think it's a joke, like how many parents would say, "Oh, that's so stupid," right? Well, if your kids hear that over and over again, then they're going to start to believe that. So speak words of positivity and words of affirmation into your children.
And I think, just to add to that, I think part of what I like to see is not to do what I call dream crushing. We don't have to be the ones always pointing out the practicality and the reality to everything, especially at younger ages. There's plenty of time for them to come to those realizations on their own. So if you have a child that's in middle school and says, "I want to be a professional basketball player when they grow up," instead of saying, "Oh, you know what, that's probably not going to happen," you could say, "Well, what do you think it's going to take to make that happen?" And I think that simple cheerleader mentality is, we don't have to point out all the practicalities and realities that early, I don't think.
No, I mean, there's a positive side to everything, and really getting people to understand, even when I coach people, whether it's your child or someone that you're working with, well, what would you be willing to do to make that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisa, if someone wants to get a hold of you and talk to you more about the different work you're doing at Nerium, the coaching you're doing, what is the best way to approach?
Well, they can find me, through my email, which, is, I'm sure we'll post it up, lisartheo@gmail, or, send me a text, shoot me a text. So
Okay.
I'll be happy to post that up in your site. So.
And finally, Lisa, last question for the show today, and thank you so much for joining us. You've been such a breath of fresh air, I'm sure, for our audience as well. I want to ask you from a mindset perspective, any words of advice to continue to help people shift their mindset from lacking confidence, from embracing change and habits and development? Any final words of wisdom you could offer?
Well, the internet is a great place. YouTube, there's so many people that speak, but, surround yourself with books. Like I said, this app, Think Up, has helped me so much. Go to you. Go to Mark Altman for Mindset Go.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank
right?
you. Thank
because you've helped me so much. And I'm so grateful that we were able to connect. I feel like you just are an abundance of, knowledge and resources. And really, you're an amazing guy. And I just know that you've helped a lot of people.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, thank you, Lisa, for that. And listen, for everybody out there, Lisa and I would like to end the show with the message of the importance of advocating for yourself, the importance of believing in yourself, and knowing that it's not just you. Everybody has a lot of the similar challenges that you have. And again, thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Altman. This was Lisa Theoharides, and we will be back next Thursday for another show. Merry Christmas, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend and holiday.
You've been listening to iCommunicate with your host, Mark Altman, on Full Service Radio, AM 830 WCRN.